Welcome to Retro Skill Modelling. This is the second diorama in the 176 series, and this one is going to be named Ambush. The diorama is going to entail the Panther tank and the 75mm assault gun looking over at a trench with attack position by troops. This is, as I said, the second in this series. The first one, Road to Victory, will actually link into this. So if I change the illustration there, you can see all of them together. So the Road to Victory one is the road on the bottom left corner with the wall. The one I'm constructing now, the Ambush, is one directly above it with the two tanks in a foresty area. So let's get into this build. So to begin with, I'm using an A4 size board here. Ignore the paint on it. That was just where I was painting the wall when I was priming it. But I'm going to be using the board. I've got some white clay here. This is air drying clay, so you don't need a kiln or anything. And I'm simply taking lumps of this clay and placing it on the board and roughly moulding it into the shape that I want. The good thing about clay is when you're doing this as a diorama, it can be applied into any shape that you want, anything that you can conceive of. It is a messy thing to do. As you can see, my hands are covered in it. The drawbacks, it does take a little while to dry out before you can go on to the next stage. So I'll just speed this up now. There's quite a lot of clay to be used here. There's quite a large surface to cover. Just keep in mind you will have to take this off when it dries to cement it onto the board. It won't stick to the board in this state. So now that I'm done, I've laid down another board next to it. This will be covered in the third diorama series in doing this part. But what I'm doing here is just lining up the clay for the part that I've already done, because this third diorama will be the continuation on into the main whole part. So it's back to the main board, and I'm just finishing up putting the clay on. As you can see, there's different levels, more indentation within the clay. I don't want it smooth, I want to be a rugged area. So once all the clay is dry, I'll go away and prime it, just using a normal primer. So now I've got to start building trees for the diorama. Those are going to be going around there. As you can see, I've primed the diorama. The clay is now dried. So that's all good. So I haven't painted anything yet. I'm just going to be building up the trees. So this is foliage clusters, and this is a light green one. And this is what I'd use for making up the foliage of the tree. I've also got some orange and red lichen in here just to break up the colour a little bit. And what I'm doing is just taking off tiny little parts of the cluster, breaking it down so that I can fit it onto the branches. So that's all the things separated, and a little bits of red blended in a bit, just completely random. For the trees, I'm using these tree armatures, which are now bendable. I painted these in Humbrol 110 wood, or natural wood, I should say. And what I do is I take a branch like that and I just bend and twist, like so. And I just bend into various shapes. There's no rhyme or reason what shape you should do. Just go with how you feel. If you've watched the other diorama, the Road to Victory, you'll see me making up a lot of these. I've got a few to make up here. So this is my basic tree shape. This is the base, and that will fit in there like that. So the tree is going to go from about here up around to there. So what I shall do is take a tree, take a base, and then just add them like that, so I know how many trees I'm going to be building up. As you can see, I'm not using my sprue to take the, my sprue cutter to take these off. I'm just pulling them off. That adds all to the texture of the tree. So if you get a little nips and digs and that into the plastic, that's perfectly okay. You want these to be rough, unless you're doing like an estate garden or something like that. Then of course you want it to be pristine. But this is just all in its natural form. Yeah, that should do about there. Maybe one more. So that's how many trees I've got to make up. To add the foliage to the trees is a simple process. I'm using a little bit of PVA glue and putting it on a branch where I want a bit of foliage to be, then simply pressing on the green clusters in random patterns again. The more random the better when you're doing these. You can use a lot of this stuff or you can use tiny amounts. Again, it's entirely up to the builder really. Just try and make it flow free as you're doing it. You'll get a feel for it as you're working on them, how you like them to look. So I'll just do that and build all the way through. So that's one done. I'll put it in the stand. So I've got another 9 to go. Okay, so I've got some brown mixed with burnt umber, raw umber even. So this is just to create textures, and for the land, most of this will be covered up. But there will be parts showing. So I've mixed up some blue and yellow to get a bit of green. And a bit of light green here. Sort of a sandy dirty track. So I'll just carry on doing this, adding colours and textures as I go along, from greens to brown. Now the base paints are dry, it's time to add the trees first of all. So what I'm doing here is just placing the bases around the diorama where I'd like the trees to go. This is a better way of doing it than putting the whole tree in straight away, because you may wish to move it around until you're happy with the positioning. Once I've got a rough idea where I'm going to be putting them, it's time to glue the bases into place. I'm using some PVA glue here. Now you can use super glue of course, but if you use PVA glue and don't wait it to set too much, you can still maneuver them around to get your ideal position. So once they're on, I'll start spreading the PVA glue around the base, onto the base as well, because you want to cover up the little circular part of the base as much as possible, so it doesn't look like you have a tree standing on a base. So I'm putting this glue all over. It doesn't really matter if you go out of line or you add a little bit somewhere where you weren't meant to. This stuff dries clear anyway. Now I'm adding the various grasses and textures to the diorama. Now you can buy this stuff in any local hobby shop or online of course, and they just come under different types of grasses. So this is dark earth I'm using first of all. It simulates mud, dark brown patches and so forth. Next is a fine grass I'm just sprinkling on. Again, make sure that you're hitting the circular base while you're doing this, so it covers it up. I'm then using some burnt grass effects, and again just sprinkling that over randomly until I'm happy with the effect. So when you're doing this, don't be afraid to use this stuff. Put it where you think it's going to go. You can always add more later on if you're not too sure. Use different colours that are going to blend in with your overall landscape. So now I'm adding some debris. This is actually stuff from the garden. You may have seen me use it from the Road to Victory diorama. This is ground up twigs and leaves and such, all blended together, and it's an effective and cheap way to add ground coverage. However, while doing this, I did actually forget to add cement to this, or glue, so you can see me adding it now. I should have done this beforehand, so I've made it a little bit messy for myself, but it's still workable. All it means is I'm going to get gluey fingers, making sure everything is stuck down. Now's the time to add the trees to the bases. Now there's just a simple little bit of normal cement into the centre of the base to weld these trees in position. Now, depending how quick you have been building this, there's a good chance you can still move the trees around to your desired position, because the PV8 will take a little bit longer to dry than normal cement. So just bear that in mind. Well, this brings part 1 to an end. In part 2, I shall be finishing off the diorama, doing a little bit more to the groundwork on the diorama, adding the actual tanks and German and Allies troops as well. If you haven't done so already, why don't you check out the other dioramas in the series of the 176 and of course the 176 build series. Also, you can check out the channel for my other content. If you subscribe to the channel, you'll get notifications of my future builds. Hit that like button, and of course you can leave a comment. But for now, thank you all very much for watching. Bye bye.